Joining me now is Sevil Mikayılova, an Azerbaijani lawmaker, to talk to us about the ongoing conflict in the Nagorno-Karabakh region, Azerbaijan. Good morning, Sevil. Thank you for joining the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Now, let's begin with the latest round of attacks that took place in Barda city. Can you tell us about the latest situation there?
This was the next interim very terrible attack on Barda region, which is too far from the battlefield, which is densely populated by civilians. So there is no military facilities, there is no military object. And this city is not related in any form to the military operations ongoing in Nagorno-Karabakh and surrounding territory. So this is terror act, and this terror act was committed by the Armenian armed forces, which is contradictory to the international law, which violates the Geneva Conventions, which violates the fourth Geneva Convention again. And now we demand from the international community to stop Armenian terror. I think the human rights organizations and the international organizations which should and must respond to these barbaric actions by the Armenian military and political leadership against the Azerbaijani civilians. This barbaric attack, this terror, shouldn't be left unanswered. We have numerously stated that each time when Armenia receives no answer and no pressure from its actions, from its terror, from its barbaric attacks against Azerbaijanis, it tempts Armenians to take another and most brutal act against the Azerbaijanis. And the Barda terror is the next in terms of the Armenian barbaric phase. So now I think the international community should respond. Otherwise, they will see terror on the doors of their country because Armenians didn't stop, and even today they are continuing to shell by missiles and other prohibited weapons the other Azerbaijani regions, Tartar, Beylagan, and many other regions which are not related to the battlefield. Of course, as the Azerbaijani president stated, we will retaliate these actions. Azerbaijan will never left it unanswered, but on the battlefield, because the Azerbaijani army has no civilian on its target, and we have never did it. And now we will continue our counter attack operations, and the enemy, the Armenian terror, will have its response on the battlefield.
Now, Sevil, following this latest round of attacks on the city of Barda, we know that it came about after yet another violation of a ceasefire agreement, and that agreement was carried out just on the 26th of October. Now, Armenia, as I said, there's a pattern there now of Armenia violating the ceasefire agreements. What can you tell us about that situation? How is Armenia not answering to this?
First of all, I want to say that the third ceasefire agreement achieved on humanitarian purposes was grossly violated by Armenia. And this was the third, I want to repeat. The first two achieved through the mediation of Russia were also ignored by Armenia. Although the meetings between the Armenian and Azerbaijani foreign ministers were taken place through the mediation of Russia and at the request of Armenian side. But again, this hypocrisy demonstrated by Armenian leadership, by Armenian diplomatic authorities once more demonstrate that Armenia is not a peace country. And is it worth to sit at a table of talks with this enemy again? Of course not, because Armenia will again violate the ceasefire and will show that it is not a peace country. The only goal of Armenia for now is to make Azerbaijan to respond to Armenia and to transfer the the war, the epicenter of war to Armenia, so that to attract other countries, other organizations to these military actions and to make it more international. But Azerbaijani government has numerously said that we have no any target in the territory of Armenia, and in response to these attacks, we will not target any territory in Armenia, but we again state that Azerbaijan has a right and preserves the right to target the legitimate targets in Armenia, and they actually want to push Azerbaijan to take these crucial steps, but we will not do it. And I think that any ceasefire agreement has no effect, as we see in over 30-year history of the conflict. The first ceasefire agreement was achieved in 1992, and Armenia violated the ceasefire regime almost every day by 30 times, 50 times, and even 250 times. And what we are what we are discussing now, Armenia is not a peace country, and Pashinyan has numerously stated, and now in his last interview to an international media stated that there is no diplomatic solution to the conflict in this very stage, which strictly and openly says that they will continue their attacks, they will not stop, and any ceasefire agreement is just a piece of paper and nothing else.
I want to have a look for a moment at the situation that the civilians are confronted with. Now, following Armenian violations, they continue to shell and bomb, and we know that civilians have been impacted as it's going way beyond Nagorno-Karabakh now. It's hitting main city centres. Can you tell us about the hardship that civilians are facing, and people have lost members of their families? What are they expecting from the Azerbaijani government? How is this crisis being handled?
The situation is terrible. It is horrible because the people feel terror. The people feel this horror every day. It is impossible to live under threat. It is impossible to live when you feel that every time, every second, you can be under a missile attack, and you can be murdered. But again, I want to say that the people living there, the locals, are very brave to stand such attacks, and they are unwilling actually to leave their territory. They say that they will stay there, they will not leave their territory, and that occurs despite they already lost their family members, and during the Berde event, 21 people were killed, and over 70 people were injured. And despite this fact, people are there, they are mourning, of course, their victims, but they stand very firm because this is their territory. As the government, Azerbaijani government has already made appeals to international organizations, to different countries, and now senior official of Azerbaijan, Hikmet Hajiyev, is at the scene of incident, just showing, just familiarizing the international diplomats, representatives of diplomatic missions in Baku with the casualties, and they are on the scene of incident. But I want to say that it is very horrible. It is we cannot even describe how cruel Armenians were against the Azerbaijani civilians. But the Azerbaijani government will continue its actions, will continue its efforts to defend the civilians, and the enemy cannot fear us anyway.